national issue speech. Does anyone know how many wrongful convictions there have been in the United States? According to Amnesty International, in the last 40 years, 140 people throughout the country have had their death sentence commuted because of evidence of their wrongful convictions. There are many reasons why capital punishment is wrong, and I will focus on 2 reasons why the death penalty should be abolished. First, there have been many wrongful convictions, and second, the expense of the death penalty is much higher than the living cost of a life sentence in prison. Capital punishment in the United States is limited under the 8th Amendment of the Constitution and used only for aggravated murders committed by mentally competent adults. In the last 40 years, over 1,200 people have been executed. There is no known number of how many innocent people have been executed since 1976, even though there has been considerable doubt about their guilt. According to BBC News, the most common argument against capital punishment is that sooner or later, innocent people will get killed because of mistakes or flaws in the justice system. The death penalty is not an efficient way of punishing criminals. In certain cases, innocent bystanders are punished for another person's wrongful act. For example, Carlos de Luna was put to death for killing gas station attendant Wanda Lopez in Corpus Christi. During his trial, de Luna told prosecutors that they had the wrong man and that Carlos Hernandez was the one to be blamed. Prosecutors blew up de Luna's accusation and continued prosecuting him. Prosecutors found Carlos de Luna guilty and he was put on death row and then later executed. If capital punishment had been abolished, Carlos de Luna would have been saved. 6 years later, Carlos Hernandez was arrested for attacking his wife, and later evidence proved that Hernandez was the real murderer of Wanda Lopez. Brian Evans said, "Failure to investigate Carlos Hernandez for the killing of Wanda Lopez or to adequately punish for other crimes suggests a cruel indifference to the people of the community he was terrorizing." Had capital punishment been abolished, the life of de Luna would have been saved, and the true killer would have been punished for his actions. De Luna is one example of why capital punishment should be abolished in the United States. Mistakes are bound to happen, but in the case of capital punishment, mistakes should not happen. According to BBC News, there is ample evidence that such mistakes are possible. In the USA, 130 people sentenced to death have been found innocent since 1973 and released from death row. It is evident that innocent lives have been executed due to wrongful convictions and improper evidence. Abolishing capital punishment would prevent mistakes from happening and in return save many lives. Secondly, the expense of the death penalty is much higher than the cost of carrying out a life sentence in prison. New York and New Jersey abandoned the death penalty because of the high cost of litigation. Even though New York had no executions, they spent over $170 million over the course of 9 years litigating death penalty appeals. Over a period of 25 years with no executions, New Jersey spent over $253 million. According to BBC, the cost of convicting and executing Timothy McVeigh for the Oklahoma City bombing was over $13 million. The average cost of one case for a life sentence without parole is roughly about $1 million, while the death penalty sentence cost about $2 million. No criminal is worth millions of taxpayer dollars. The death penalty costs more than life in prison because prosecuting is too expensive for a state. According to CBS News, death penalty cases are notoriously expensive to prosecute because of the number of appeals involved. That money would be better served by assisting families of murder victims. The state of North Carolina, in the most thorough death penalty study, found that the death penalty cost the state over $2 million per each execution. The study compared the cost of the death sentence to that of sentencing murderers to life imprisonment. Most of the cost occurs at the trial level in its review. The state of Kansas reached its conclusion that capital punishment cases are 70% more expensive than comparable non-death penalty cases. The cost of capital punishment in executing a criminal is not worth the state's money. It burdens taxpayers far more than life imprisonment without parole. Capital punishment in the United States is a serious matter and affects millions of Americans. According to Lawrence Journal, sentencing someone to death for a crime is an extremely serious matter. It shouldn't be easy to either issue that sentence or carry it out. It is important that Americans in the United States take the topic of capital punishment seriously. Capital punishment is morally wrong and should be abolished. The reasons are clear and reasonable. First, there have been too many wrongful convictions and the innocent lives have been taken. Second, the expense of the death penalty costs taxpayers twice as much as sentencing a murderer to life in prison without parole. Because of the flaws in the judicial system and the cost of a death sentence trial should cause our law enforcement and elected officials to support the abolishment of the death penalty.